Robert, I'm not sure if you have a quorum on the planning board, do we?
I don't know as of right now. Who do we have? We've got John, we got me. Sheila said she's going to join. Patrick said he would join. We will have a quorum. Why don't we get started? And
Okay, well, we'll get started then, and then by the time we get to vote, we'll have a quorum. Okay, I'm going to open the joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen, Board of Health, and the Planning Board, Wednesday, August 16th, 2023 at 6:30. Let's see. Opening comments. There are a few announcements here. 2023 resident parking stickers are now available for purchase at Nahant.org. Parking stickers are $10 each. All outstanding bills must be paid to the town, and the census must be completed. The compost area open on Wednesdays and Saturdays from 9 to 3. 2023 resident parking stickers required. Visit the Public Works page at Nahant.org for a full list of acceptable material. Recycling for metal, white goods, TVs, computers, last Saturday of each month until October 28th, from 8 to 12 behind the DPW garage on Flash Road. Resident stickers required. Visit the Public Works Department at Nahant.org for acceptable materials. Fees may apply. And finally, Market by the Sea, formerly Nahant Farmers Market, Saturdays 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Flash Road, August 19th, September 16th, and October 14th. For more information how to become a vendor, visit the market page at Nahant.org or contact Kate Taylor at Nahant.org. Josh, you have anything in opening comments?
I just wanted to mention that Kings Beach closures have been in the news a lot in the Lynn item. This is something that's been going on for decades, and it's pretty disgraceful. Hopefully, Lynn and Swampscott get their act together and take care of that. But mainly, I wanted to point out that Nahant has no combined stormwater and sewage pipes. Those are completely separate systems. So we don't run into the problem of dumping sewage during storms. So it brought to my attention that some people didn't know that. So I just thought I'd mention that. And then secondly, I just want to take a moment to remember Lisa Gallagher Arena, beloved Nahant citizen who passed away far too young. Condolences to Charlie and her kids. And I also sadly saw in last night's item that Charlie's mother passed away. So difficult time for the Arena family. So they're in our thoughts.
Thank you, Josh. Jane, any opening comments?
No, just to carry on where Josh left off on the combined storage outfalls. Aren't there 3 or 4 combined storage outfalls in Lynn Harbor on the westerly side of Nahant?
I don't believe they're combined. They do have an overflow system that's activated at times, Gene, at the Lynn Water and Sewer when the treatment plant can't handle the flows. So my understanding is that the treatment plant is tertiary treatment. If they get the heavy flows, they have to release before the third treatment. They generally chlorinate first, but then discharge before it's completely treated. So there are times when heavy rain where there's overflow. Lynn Water and Sewer treatment plant can't handle the flows, and they discharge before full treatment.
Yeah, there were a couple of times where it got pretty nasty over there, but it seemed to clean up real quick. But it's a question. Thanks for the info.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's one. I think you, I don't know if you said that, but there's one, as you mentioned.
North Shore
at the
Community
Freeman
College,
Plant.
yeah.
And then I just wanted to echo Josh's comments. Lisa worked here at the town hall for many years and, unfortunately had to stop working because of her diagnosis. And, she'll be sincerely missed. She was just a joyful, supportive member of the team. And, it's sad to see her go, and thoughts are with her family. So I appreciate Josh mentioning that. And then I also I forgot to add to the agenda just an announcement that the Barefoot Black Tie event is this Saturday, August 19th from 6 to 11 o'clock on Short Beach. There'll be dancing, food provided by Brett Henry Catering, a cash bar, and tickets are $100 a ticket. It's a fundraiser for the Council on Aging. And hopefully it's a sold out event.
I look forward to that. Looks like we have some good weather for that on Friday night, hopefully. So,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
I would like to let you know that we have a quorum. Patrick O'Reilly can attend. He's coming down from Maine, and Steve Viviano also can attend, but we do have 4 members and can proceed on the appointments and nominations. Thank you.
Okay, let's get on with that. Then we have a few appointments. So these aren't nominations, Tony, right? These are just joint appointments.
That's correct.
Okay.
When we have a bylaw here in town that when an elected position becomes vacant, that a joint vote of the board of selectmen and the board or committee with the vacant position votes to appoint someone into that role. They fill that role until the following election, which will be in April of next year. And I believe Chairman Steinberg has some other comments as well regarding the upcoming votes before you get into them.
So Tony, I don't believe we nominated these people officially in our last meeting. We voted to recommend to nominate. So should we first take any comments on nominating them, vote on nominating, and then vote to appoint?
In my discussions with Dan Scripp, who's here, because it's fairly straightforward and it's 1 member per position, a nomination doesn't really need to happen. But Dan, fill in for me.
Yeah, they're unopposed positions. It's only 1 position, 1 person per position. So I don't think that we really need the nominations. I mean, it doesn't hurt to have them, but I think it's superfluous at this point.
Okay, well, we'll just proceed to the appointment. Michelle Capano is highly recommended by the planning board. She has been very diligent, made enormous contributions to the planning board, and we are very pleased with the work she has done and happy to have her appointed if we so vote. Rebecca Flacca is, some of you may not know her. She is a medical doctor. Her husband is also a medical doctor. They live on Nahant Road across from Town Hall. They're natives of Germany. And she was very involved in providing input on short-term housing, and a very intelligent woman who I know, and I can highly recommend her for the alternate position. And the planning board thought she would be an excellent person for that position. And then we would move to reappoint Jimmy Dolan as the other alternate member. So if there are no questions or other comments, I could proceed to make a motion with respect to the open member position.
Go ahead, Rob.
I move to appoint Michelle Capano to the open seat on the planning board effective August 15th, 2023, with the term expiring April 27th, 2024. Does anyone on the planning board want to move to appoint Michelle, and then we'll do the Board of Selectmen second, if that's okay with you, Mark?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Does someone want us to move on the planning board?
So moved.
And who was that?
That was me, Mr. Chairman.
Shannon, okay. And do we have a second?
Second. By Sheila.
All right. And the vote is as follows. Patrick O'Reilly, not present. Shannon Bianchi.
Yes.
Steve Viviano, not present. Sheila Hamilton.
Yes.
John Stabile. Johnny there?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then Rob Steinberg, yes. Next appointment.
Well, hold on a second. Let's have the Board of Selectmen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
That's okay.
I move that the Board of Selectmen nominate Michelle Capano for the open seat on the planning board.
Second,
It's not nominate, it's appoint.
I'm sorry. I move that the Board of Selectmen appoint Michelle Capano for the open seat on the planning board.
With a term expiring April 27th, 2024. We have a second on that motion.
second,
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing here and none. Josh,
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen, and I.
And,
Okay, we have a-
and just before you move on, if I can interrupt, I just would like to give a shout out to Cal Hastings, which is the vacant seat that Michelle is filling, who's served the board for many, many years. And, you know, I'm very grateful to have worked with him over the last few.
And Tony, I'm grateful as well. Cal is very dependable there every time we have a meeting, and served for probably over 20 years, maybe more, and just did a tremendous job. And we thanked Cal on behalf of the planning board. I thank Cal for his service. So I will now move to appoint Rebecca Flocka to the alternate position on the planning board effective August 15th, 2023, with a term ending June 30th, 2024. Do we have somebody who wants to make that motion? I mean,
I'll move that motion.
move that motion. And do we have a second?
I'll second that.
And we now have the roll call vote of the planning board. So starting with Patrick O'Reilly, not present. Shannon Bianchi.
Yes.
Steve Viviano, not present. Sheila Hamilton.
Yes.
John Stabile.
Yes.
And Rob Steinberg is a yes. All right, over to you, Mark.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to appoint Rebecca Flocka to the alternate position on the planning board effective August 15th, 2024.
3. No, 3.
2023, with the term ending June 30th, 2024.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Second,
Motion is made and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion?
I do have one quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
So the alternate terms run from June 30th to June 30th?
Yes, and actually Rebecca's, now that Michelle has been appointed to fill the remaining term of Cal's position, Rebecca's being appointed to fill the remaining term of Michelle's.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the, the planning board is elected, so those expire at the time of town election, but the alternates are appointed and appointed
By the fiscal
in this
year.
case, June 30th, into the
Yeah,
fiscal year, yeah.
Their terms are on the fiscal year, yep.
All right, just wanted to understand that date difference.
Any further discussion on the motion?
No.
Seeing here and none.
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen, and I. Okay, we have another appointment here, I believe, right?
Okay. I ask for a motion to reappoint James Dolan as an alternate member of the planning board effective July 1st, 2023, with a end term of June 30th, 2025. Does someone want to so move?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Roll call vote, Patrick O'Reilly, not present. Shannon Bianchi.
Yes.
Steve Viviano, not present. Sheila Hamilton.
Yes.
John Stabile.
Yes.
And Rob Steinberg, yes. So I believe that can, I pass it over to you. Have no further motions to make at this time.
Thank you, Rob.
I'll make a motion. I
Good.
move that the Board of Select,
Wait, Josh, do I need to adjourn the planning board meeting?
Well, we'll just let the selectmen do their motion on the reappointment of.
Oh, right,
James
excuse me, I'm sorry.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to reappoint James Dolan as an alternate member of the Planning Board effective July 1st, 2023, with a term ending date of June 30th, 2025.
second,
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing, hearing none, all in favor?
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen, aye. Go ahead, Rob.
All right, thank you, Board of Selectmen, for allowing us to be part of this meeting today and for holding the joint meeting today so promptly. With that said, I ask for a motion to adjourn the planning board meeting. And that was moved by Shannon,
Yes.
seconded by,
I'll second it. Sheila Hamilton.
okay, I'll call the vote. Patrick O'Reilly, not present. Shannon Bianchi,
Yes.
Steve Viviano, not present. Sheila Hamilton,
Yes.
John Stabile,
Yes.
Rob Steinberg. Yes. So thank you very much, Board of Selectmen and the planning board who was able to attend today.
Thank you, Rob, and thank
Thank
you for the members of the planning board. And thank you for the newly appointed members. Thanks for participating.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm out of town, so I've got to hop off and get back to work here. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, we have new business. We have some event requests to approve here.
I can do that. I move the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the following event requests. Nahant Village Church Community Yard Sale on Saturday, August 19th, 2023, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And the second annual Nahant Firefighters Association Local 2718 Charitable Cornhole Tournament on Saturday, October 7th, 2023, starting at 1:00 p.m. at Flash Road Park.
Second,
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? These are events that have happened each year, so I look forward to joining them. I know the Village Church is planning a very big yard sale, so I'm hoping that people can come up and participate. Looks like a good day. So, any further
Yep.
discussion on the motions?
So Saturday, we have that Village Church Yard Sale and the Farmers Market, same day on Saturday.
Okay. Any further discussion?
No.
Seeing, hearing none, all in favor?
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I. We have some minutes to approve, Josh?
Yep, I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the Board of Selectmen meeting minutes from May 3rd, 2023.
Second,
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussions on the motions?
No.
Seeing, hearing none, all in favor?
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I. Ongoing business, are we gonna bring this up tonight, Tony, or are we gonna put this off to our next meeting?
We're gonna take this up at the next meeting, October 6th. There's no issue. It's just, I didn't have enough time to kind of prepare some of the background information for you. And so it's not urgent, but we'll be taking it up on the next meeting.
Okay, this
So-
is in regards to the Kelly Greens Golf Course lease that needs to be extended. So could we make sure, Tony, at that next meeting that members of the golf course committee are present?
Yep, Eric Green, the chairman, and Brett from the golf course, we're both going to be on, Brett Waterman, we're going to be on the call tonight. And I let them know that we plan to bump it to the next meeting, and they had no issue with that.
Okay, sounds great. Gene?
No comments.
Okay, great. Okay, ongoing business, trash rates and billing, composting pilot program. Tony?
All right, so as we've talked over the last couple of months here at the Board of Selectmen meeting, one of the goals of the town has been, trying to combat the rising costs of waste services, trash collection, curbside collection for the residents in town. Unfortunately, the costs nationwide have spiked significantly, and every year we're seeing a 4% increase on our curbside collection costs. So we've, really tried to find ways to make that more palatable, make it more equitable, and attempt to reduce it as best as we possibly can. This year, we need to raise about $687,000 in trash fees. Last year, a residential rate was around $380, and right now we're estimating it to be closer to about $400. So, we've been looking at our billing system, and one change that we implemented last year was we included the trash fee with residents' first water sewer bill of the fiscal year, attempting to make it one less billing cycle to have to process. But because that fee is so significant now, we had a lot of feedback from residents about how that one bill with all three charges combined was difficult for people. So what we're looking to do this year is actually divide it into 3 equal payments and attach that to each one of the water sewer bills. So spreading it out over the year will make it a little bit more palatable for the residents, I think. And we're also looking at ways to reduce our costs, which is going to be in the form of tonnage. So we've spent a lot of time on how do we reduce tonnage in the waste stream. And one of the best ways to do that is to incentivize composting. We talked about that a few meetings ago, and we've met with members of the community. We spoke with members from SWIM. We've been on a few calls, Mark. I know you've been on them too, with the regional coordinator from DEP. We've talked to, waste management, and even Black Earth composting. About 70 people in the town are currently signed up with Black Earth composting. If 100 households sign up with Black Earth composting, it would produce a 30% reduction in the cost per household. So whatever the fee is for month-to-month or 6-month or 1-year membership, it would be reduced by 30% if we get another 30 members signed up. So additionally, the environmental impacts of composting are significant. The maintenance impacts to our sewer system and your home sewer system and garbage disposal are beneficial. But it also, by pulling food waste, which is the heaviest part of what you put out at the curb, it's going to provide a benefit in reduction on tonnage, which is how we're billed as a community. And then, of course, as you know, and as we'll talk about in the next part of the meeting here, with wildlife concerns in the town, removing that food source out of the waste stream would help us in ways with that effort as well. So the town has looked into producing an optional pilot program incentivizing residents to join Black Earth composting. And what we are hoping, to announce very soon by way of a mailer to all residents and with the help of SWIM is a first year reimbursement for joining Black Earth composting. So if you sign up for a full year with Black Earth composting and get, we looked at the different starter kits that are included in that. There's the highest level of starter kit included in that. It would run you about $260. If you do that and submit your receipt through this pilot program, the town will reimburse you completely for that cost. So you'd essentially get your first year completely free. And you also, by being a Black Earth customer, you're also eligible for a $20 rebate on your trash fee from the town. So that's the overall concept. We're working out the fine print and advertising of the program, but hope to be, sending that out and formalizing it in the coming weeks.
Tony, could you give a simple overview of how Black Earth works?
It's a curbside collection on a weekly basis. So the starter kit would provide you a bin that you put on the curb, and a number of compostable bags that you can put your food waste into the bags and then put them on the curbside, into the curbside bin. And they come to your house and collect it right from the curb.
Great, thank you.
Tony, you did a great job explaining this, and I'm a big advocate of this program. I currently participate in it, and my only regret is I wished I started it earlier than I did. It's terrific. There are two Black Earth containers. One's a 35 quart one, and the other one I think is a smaller one, 10 quart. So depending on your family size, you could choose. There is an initial cost for the container. I'm not sure if we're going to reimburse that, Tony. Are we?
Yeah, that I looked at the larger bin and that starter pack, and that's what totaled around $260
Okay.
with the 1 year plus that larger starter kit.
So this is a
You could
great
give
option.
people the option if people prefer to have a smaller bin because they're not going to compost as much. Obviously, our hope is to incentivize as much composting as possible. So we went with the larger package. But those details are still, we can make some adjustments, if that's more of a family size type preference. And lastly, I also failed to mention that, this pilot program would be completely funded with ARPA funds, that we still have some funds that need to be spent by 2025, I believe. So it wouldn't, this program would not come from the taxpayer general fund. It would be funded through ARPA.
Great, Tony. Again, I think this is a great opportunity for people to get involved with this. In addition to all of the benefits that Tony highlighted, the environmental benefits, wildlife issues in terms of getting into your trash in the middle of the night, our wastewater collection system, because we're not disposing down garbage disposal, 35 pounds a week of garbage. So, I mean, these are all great incentives for people to get involved. So hopefully we can put this program together. In addition, Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at, we'll put the numbers together, Tony, but the tonnage each year, if everybody participated in this, our ultimate goal could significantly reduce our rubbish and trash fees on an annual basis. So hopefully we get a
Right.
flyer out and get it to everybody, and people can take a serious look at this, and hopefully they'll participate.
Hey, Tony, thank you, Mark. Tony, on the trash side of things, are we still looking at uniform trash barrels?
That's definitely another concept that we're considering and using the remaining amount of ARPA funds with. We're starting with this, but yeah, that's something that we have explored, utilizing ARPA funds to purchase barrels to provide to residents. What that could provide to the town in a financial savings, which ultimately could result in better trash rates in the future, is a reduction in labor costs for waste management. You know, if we have all uniform barrels, they can run the route with automated collection trucks, which saves them time and ultimately, you know, costs them less, which costs us less. So by reducing tonnage and by speeding up the process by which it's collected, it puts us in a position for better contract rates in the future. And hopefully, you know, flattening out that 4% increase that we're currently experiencing every year.
Is that in the near future?
It can be. It's something that we've talked about in the last couple of meetings. We kind of said, let's focus on the composting pilot program first. And that's definitely the next step for us to have a discussion on that.
I'm just wondering because my trash barrel is wearing out.
All right, well, we'll get on it.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Tony. Josh, any comments on this?
No, sounds like a good idea.
Right. I want to thank SWIM and all of their members who have been helping us along this process. They've been very helpful. So it's a great segue into rodent management presentation by our public health interns, Meredith Thibodeau and John Coulon, because I think John and Meredith, you could probably comment on how beneficial a waste reduction program would be in our stream. So go ahead.
Which one of us do you want first, Mark?
Tony, you have this. I know.
Yeah, so John was able to secure a DPH grant that allowed us to fund an intern position, and Meredith Thibodeau has been, you know, working with the town over the summer. She actually completed her internship last week, and you know, really used the opportunity to conduct a case study, I would call it, on rodent control and looking at what neighboring communities employ and what you know, standard practices and how they are, you know, can be good or bad or unknown. And she put together a presentation of her work that I'm going to let her present in a moment. But John, do you have anything else to add?
I would like to add that Meredith is a master's degree candidate in public health with Southern New Hampshire University. And we came by her internship through the Massachusetts Health Officers Association in cooperation with the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. Meredith has not only presented this PowerPoint to Tony this past week, but earlier today, Meredith was to present this to the Massachusetts Department of Public Health Summer Intern Project which was being held at the State Labs in Jamaica Plain. I've certainly seen it several times. I've seen it grow from an idea. And if this were stand-up comedy, I would say Meredith has a solid 12 to present to you tonight. Would you agree, Meredith?
I'm not sure I would go that far.
I'm going to hand it over to you, Meredith. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you for having me tonight. As John said, I am Meredith Kippo. I'm a Master's of Public Health candidate with a concentration in Global Health Studies. I've been in Nahant this summer and have just been so inspired and awed by all I've seen and all I've learned. So I'm happy to share my presentation with you. If you just bear with me, I will attempt to share my
I
screen.
got it. I have it shared, Meredith. So just let me know. Can you see it?
I can see it. I did make some modifications to it this afternoon.
Yeah, this is the one
Okay.
you sent
Okay.
like a couple hours ago.
Okay. All right. So you just want me to tell you when to click?
Yeah.
Okay. So my summer internship project was on rodent management survey and practices in Nahant and the surrounding communities. So go ahead and click. Rodent management is globally a widespread health and economic concern. There are approximately 1,500 to 2,500 rodent species worldwide who inhabit every continent except for Antarctica. Rodents are known to be direct and indirect carriers of over 31 diseases, including hantavirus, hemorrhagic fever, leptospirosis, and rat bite fever, among others, which can spread to people through direct contact, breathing contaminated air, touching contaminated surfaces, being bitten, scratched, or eating contaminated food. Rodents harbor ticks, mites, and fleas that can act as vectors to spread diseases between rodents and people. And they can cause property damages and electrical fires by chewing through building materials and wiring and cause significant crop damage and losses. According to the World Health Organization and the Food and Agricultural Organization, rodents consume and destroy an estimated 5% of the food produced worldwide and destroy 33 million tons of food per year, which is enough to feed 130 million people, making them both destructive and deadly. Rodent management is an under-discussed public health problem. Rodents can create persistent and prevalent health problems from indigenous villages in the rainforest to rice farms in Asia, and all the way to the metropolitan cities in the US and around the world. Rodent infestations occur everywhere, and how we manage them will determine the health impacts that they have. If you next slide, and go ahead and click. As human habitats become denser, rodents are drawn to the allure of easy food access and safe harborage from predators. Rodent management can be categorized under prevention, exclusion, and elimination interventions, and under physical, chemical, biological, and electrical controls. Integrated pest management, or IPM practices, utilize a combination of controls to best manage the pest population. Knowing and understanding target species biology and habitats are critical for management and population control. Next slide. So this project, requested in parts by some residents of Nahant, includes research into rodent containment and or management interventions for considered implementation. There have been expressed concerns regarding rodent-side use and implication for non-target species, as well as the environment. Additional information on alternative means of control has been requested to be considered for implementation. Nahant's small landmass and ongoing coyote management issues make rodent control a concern. Next slide. Per the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, One Health is the idea that the health of people is connected to the health of animals in the shared environment. When one is protected, all is protected. So Nahant is a tight-knit community of families and individuals committed to maintaining the health and the beauty of their island home. Concerns that an unchecked rodent population will provide easy food sources for the resident coyote population, encouraging them to remain close to neighborhoods and food establishments, is a concern. In such a geographically limited environment, rodent management is a high priority in maintaining the health and safety of the community. Maintaining rodent control can optimize public health while also potentially negative impacting one of the coyote food sources. Next slide. So the methods we used, I created and emailed a statewide electronic survey and distributed to members of the Massachusetts Health Officers Association for input on regional rodent management practices. Local town and jurisdiction websites were reviewed for availability of rodent management, interventions, and information. A literature review was conducted. 14,348 titles were found for rodent management. So definitely some literature out there. 15 titles were selected and retrieved for review based on a pretty condensed search criteria. Field review was also conducted with the direction of the local Board of Health agent, utilizing knowledge of the local geography, history, and the IPM practices over the last 24 years. Click. So a stakeholder analysis was created to be utilized in determining stakeholder needs and wants and communication needs and frequency. In this case, the Department of Public Works and Health and Government officials have high involvement, high authority. Citizens and community members also have high interest and involvement in rodent management interventions, as the rodent population can directly impact homes, businesses, and health. Community buy-in is critical for successful planning and implementation. Collaborative community implementation will be necessary to effectively prevent and manage the rodent population. Next slide. And go ahead and click. So we received a total of 75 responses, 21.3%, representing 88 out of 351 towns, which is a 25.1% response rate. 45.7% reported that the town's jurisdictions have or are currently experiencing a rodent management concern, so it is out there. 55 communities responded that they currently do not have a rodent management issue and henceforth no rodent management plan. One town reported that their rodent concern was primarily centered around beaver control and damage. Click. 47.6% of respondents, including those from towns who had and did not have rodent issues or plans, were unsure if their methods were successful or not and reported difficulty in monitoring and tracking complaints and resolutions. 42% of the towns, primarily those who reported rodent management issues and utilizing a variety of interventions, felt that the current methods were effective. Next slide. So what types of methods are there? Research has revealed rodent control can generally be classified under 4 different categories: physical, biological, chemical, and electronic interventions. The physical interventions include taking steps to prevent rodents from entering buildings in the first place. This is a strong and effective means of rodent control. Sealing up entrance points inside and out, sealing up food and water source supplies, eliminating sources of harborage can greatly discourage rodents from taking up residence, and physical trapping humanely and lethally can work to remove the rodent problem before it grows, but it must be accomplished in the first sign of rodent entrance. Biological controls include utilizing natural predators, both wild and domestic, to control the population, plant-based chemicals and extracts, as well as newly developed rodent contraceptives. Rodents have a heightened olfactory sensation, so this makes them extremely sensitive to strong smells such as cinnamon, peppermint, and predator urine, which can act as a deterrent for some pests. However, if a rodent is hungry enough and the food's accessible enough, rodents will disregard the negative stimulus in search of an easy meal. There is limited research on the efficacy and efficiency of these interventions. Chemical interventions include rodenticide, which, although effective, can have an unwanted effect on non-target species such as wildlife, domestic animals, and humans. Extreme caution must be taken when handling, baiting, and disposing of rodenticides. Fumigation can also be effective at managing large burrows, but can be quite costly. Chemical interventions such as electronic interventions can include electrical currents, high frequency noise creation, and ultrasonic waves as a means to deter the rodent population. Electrical currents are not always an effective or humane method of disposing of rodents or pests because they can sometimes misfire and cause a non-lethal hit. Electrical interventions can also harm non-target species such as birds or insects if they happen to be in the area. Next slide. This one has a lot of clicks, so double one more, there you go. So first and second generation rodenticides have long been the standard treatment when managing rodent infestations. Most contain poison or chemicals that prevent the rodents from clotting, and the affected rodent usually dies 2 to 3 days after ingesting. As mentioned before, rodenticide bait is highly effective in killing the mice, but can also impact non-target species that might encounter the bait or eat the affected rodent. Predatory birds, foxes, coyotes, and household pets are at risk of becoming ill or dying after ingesting the affected rodent. Special care needs to be taken, especially where children might be present. CDC recommends utilizing rodenticide as a last resort and preferably under the handling of licensed pest control operators. Next click, there you go, smart boxes. Smart boxes are one of the newer non-toxic trapping technologies that catch rodents above ground. When a rodent enters the trap, sensors detect movement and body heat. A catch function is activated, immediately killing the rodent with an electrical current. The rodent is deposited into a plastic bag in a closed container. The trap automatically resets itself. The smart system monitors an area and transmit activity occurrences remotely via timestamp activity. The system uses algorithms to predict infestations before they occur based on trend curves. Go ahead, one more click. And ContraPest is another newer rodent management technique. ContraPest is the first EPA registered contraceptive bait and is targeted towards Norway and roof rat species. There's 2 active ingredients for vinyl chlorhexene, diapoxide, and triptolide, which work to reduce fertility in the rodent population, both male and females. The short-acting half-life minimizes the effect on non-target populations, such as predators, pets, and humans. In laboratory and field studies performed by the manufacturer, Sensitech revealed that ContraPest is repeatedly consumed over even available food and water. Studies involving the laboratory and wild-caught rats, according to Sensitech, have demonstrated a 93 to 100% reduction in litter sizes compared to control rats. And ContraPest is reportedly best utilized as a complementary benefit to existing integrated pest management practices. Sensitech literature reports reduced rodent sightings at bait station as the indicator of reduced population presence. And multiple major US cities have trialed the product, but some, including Washington, DC, reportedly have discontinued the use due to inconclusive evidence. Next slide. So who is using what? Small towns, rural, and cooperative communities reported relying primarily on owner responsibility for property management and maintenance, with the health department conducting site inspections and education as needed. Larger and more urban communities reported greater problems with rodent activities and reported using a combination of methods, including education, town ordinances, individual property management, and either chemical, biological, or physical control methods in targeted areas of concern. Many cities have participated in trials of newer rodent management technologies, including Stoughton, Abington, Beverly, Salem, and Peabody. The city of Somerville has reported trialing several pilot programs and implementing IPM practices across multiple departments to get the best approach. They have 2 full-time staff currently dedicated to their rodent program administration, and they report that their residential rodent control assistance program has had a positive impact over the last 5 years. So despite all of these trials, really integrating the IPM practices is their most effective means of control. Next slide. Control methods varied by town and cooperative, but the perceived most successful utilized an integrated pest management approach as recommended by the CDC, which provided education, reduced areas of food source and harborage, and utilized additional control services from licensed pest control specialists as needed. Next slide. This has lots of clicks, go ahead. In any established community, there's an organically occurring ecological cycle that has kind of a normal influx and recession of animal life. Some years we see a lot of rodents, we see a lot of rabbits, we see a lot of coyotes, and some years we see less. And that is a completely naturally occurring organic cycle. When examining rodent and vermin control, we look at food sources as the primary attractant. We often neglect and overlook the natural occurrence of the food in the environment. In the case of Nahant, we have abundant marine life, we have prolific backyard gardens, beautiful fruit trees, patio containers, chicken coops, naturally occurring prey, and unhelpful human practices, which include the improper garbage disposal, food left outside intended for pets, and accessible bird feeders. So we go ahead and click. We provide a veritable buffet for the rodent population. Next slide. So inclusion wildlife populations, including rodents and coyotes, have been present in Massachusetts for thousands of years and can bring health risks to humans within close contact. Zoonotic disease transmission and both subsequent and or accessory health implications are a public health priority. Increasing human populations, denser communities, and less natural habitat provide greater opportunity for feeding and harborage options, which draws wildlife ever closer to the human populations. Managing wildlife access to easy food and or shelter is imperative to coexisting and keeping wildlife out of the town and in their natural habitat. IPM services are environmentally friendly, focus on education and prevention through sanitation and exclusion. IPM practices include extermination only when absolutely necessary to control rodent population and infestation. Educating the community on rodent control interventions, working collaboratively with home and business owners, and reducing areas of food and harborage can work to effectively manage rodent population with little untargeted environmental impact. Adding the services of licensed pest management providers for larger infestations can offer a wide variety of additional removal and control methods and are most effective when combined with the other interventions. IPM practices can be applied to both global communities on both smaller and larger scales. Continued education on IPM practices are recommended for the citizens of Nahant. Many of their current coyote management procedures and interventions can translate to rodent management interventions as well. They're both very closely intertwined. Nahant prides itself on the cleanliness of the island, and certainly that's an advantage in rodent management practice as well as coyote. IPM practices will be both beneficial to not only preventing rodent infestations, but also in managing coyote populations' increasing proximity within the town. Learning to coexist safely in a healthy manner is imperative for continued population health, and creating a multifaceted management approach gives the greatest opportunity for controls and management. And on this slide are just a couple examples of the education that I've created over the summer, both on rodent and rodent management flyer and an updated coyote postcard. Next slide. So that is the end. I just want to say a big thank you to Tony and the community of Nahant for welcoming me over the summer. And most especially John for an incredibly educational, exciting, and dynamic internship experience. And there are references included at the end if any of you would love to read more about rodent management practices.
Thanks, Meredith.
Thank you all.
Is the smart box something that a resident would use, or is that more like a municipal type contraption?
I know that right now, most of the smart boxes are being trialed in municipal areas. I think the eventual plan might be moving towards residential, and they might even offer a resident. Actually, I do know that they have now since offered they have started a residential program as well.
And then on the contraceptive version, you mentioned the half-life of the contraception is short enough that it doesn't risk, like, for example, birds of prey, or
yes. Oops, sorry. Well, yes. So the half-life of the contraceptive means it gets in and out of the system very quick, very rapidly. So the effect on non-target species is minimal. That being said, that means that rodent needs to consume that contraceptive every day. Just like a human would need to remember to take their birth control pill every day, the rodent would need to consume the bait every single day to maintain that reduced fertility rate.
All right, thank you.
Well, I'd like to emphasize the point on the contraceptive approach that the material is subject to the effects of weather. It is a liquid and therefore subject to our overnight winter temperatures. It does freeze, and it is very difficult to make sure that there is enough at the feeding station to ensure that the target species are getting adequate doses every day, let alone the difficulty of making sure that the rodents or any other animal it is dosed for is going to that feeding station. And for that reason, my colleagues in northeastern Massachusetts have not been able to endorse this approach for their municipalities. It is certainly has different implications if there is an individual property owner, be it a property manager at a location or residential or commercial, or a homeowner at an owner-occupied location. They have different abilities to monitor than a municipality that is running a rodent control program. And I'd like to note also, Meredith began her presentation giving us the 10,000-foot view of rodent control, how important it is globally as a concern. Those of us of a certain age remember the quote attributed to Tip O'Neill when he said, "All politics is local." That is certainly true, and it's certainly also true for public health. So we are able to focus on Nahant for Meredith's internship and for this project. And as Meredith was pointing out, Nahant has certain characteristics that are common to any municipality and unique to Nahant. So these are considerations to take into thinking about going ahead with any particular approach. And I think it is, again, worth noting, as Meredith did several times, while no municipalities in northeastern Massachusetts, to our knowledge, are using any new approach alone, having tried quite a few, the most effective is a robust, community-wide, and constant IPM approach. IPM, again, standing for Integrated Pest Management. So there's no quick way, there's no silver bullet. It is a hard slog, even for those communities that have staff that can specialize in rodent control. I think Meredith's presentation has synthesized what we've been looking at, seeing, and talking about for many years, and I think it was very well put together. Thank you.
And thank you, John. And thank you, Meredith. Very comprehensive, and thank you for all the work that you've done. One of the key component here is in terms of controlling rodents is food source, I think, right? You eliminate the food source, you're halfway there, maybe. So I think that is a very important component here that we need to focus on. The whole integrated package is important, but trying to eliminate the food source is probably the most important.
Mark, I'd like to add that over the years, when we've looked at food sources, we've had to look at people running a normal life at their home. And so we'll request the people with chicken coops to harden those structures. We'll ask the people with the backyard vegetable gardens to, again, harden that garden. There's approaches, fencing, and certain complementary flowers that will aid in making sure that the vegetables are not a primary food source for not only rodents, but the other animals that we are looking to control, including coyotes. And the several people in town who are currently have chicken coops, in my opinion, are doing very well in terms of hardening that structure. Meredith and I visited those coops during these past 10 weeks, and we were very impressed with the efforts that people have put into those chicken coops. So it is doable. An integrated pest management approach is doable without eliminating all of the ways that we have of living a full life. Even bird feeders can be operated in a way to minimize access for the rodents and any other animals, including bears. You'll notice that there are no bears reported in town, and I think we can thank the bird feeder, the people who feed birds, because they're really good at that. At least that's what I'm going to say tonight.
Hey, John,
Hopefully-
is
Go
there
ahead.
any kind of a pest management program in place now in town by the town itself?
No, not formally. I think the biggest assistance that I can give and biggest recommendation to folks is to call me. I've had a long career and I've never been without nuisance cases, particularly where food sources have been accessible to whatever animal or insect we are considering as vermin. And it is usually always the same approach: food sources and shelter opportunities. But vermin are always going to be with us. We just need to control their population and control the food sources as much as possible. So we've always been able to work out a good look at a person's residence or place of business and identify what, if any, food sources or sheltering opportunities there might be there.
And can I just also add, John, that is consistent with the data that we collected from some of the smaller towns and more of the cooperative towns, more of the rural away, is really relying on the public health officers to come out, assist with inspections, provide the education, and kind of tighten up practices. Really, that's what a lot of these areas are doing and doing successfully.
Have you drawn any comparisons with other communities during the study? Communities like ours, similar area, Oceanside, et cetera?
The responses we got did include, I'm not sure, I think Lynn was on there. We did get a full list of 88 responses. So varying from tiny rural communities such as Ludlow, all the way up to Cambridge, Boston, Somerville, some of the larger communities. So that was the synthesis. Like, a lot of the smaller communities either don't have a problem with rodent management and are relying on the integrated approach kind of unofficially with education and inspections as needed. The larger towns tend to have more of a rodent issue. And so require the integrated pest management and then take it in a step. Somerville, actually issues citations, and they have demolition protocols and policies. So that is part of their process.
I think it's fair to say that the town of Nahant takes that integrated approach. It's just not formal or official, but essentially that's what we do. We do a lot of education, a lot of site visits. John works with, all of, the commercial businesses in town, and then certainly on call for residential issues, and spends a lot of time, working with whoever might call on those unique situations of educating them as to where the pest might be coming from, how to correct it. And then a lot of, as Meredith had mentioned, Gene, a lot of our efforts with coyote control has a dual benefit and has had a positive impact on our rodent control stuff too. And then lastly, in that last slide, you saw Meredith had put together a couple postcards and pamphlets for us to add to our website and to provide John to hand out as he's going around. And I just wanted to say thank you to Meredith. Thank you for doing that presentation and putting together that case study. Very well done. And John, thank you for all the work you do for the town. And then really, I want to commend the residents of the town of Nahant because, I feel that, especially with the coyote issue that we've had in town, the residents have really adapted and responded well and appropriately to the guidance that we've received on that. And it's true, the town is extremely clean, and that's not just town property, that's personal property, commercial property. It's very well kept. And I think that, the townspeople should be commended for their efforts, and it makes a difference, in our situation.
I wanted to echo that, Tony. As an outsider coming into Nahant, I was blown away by the cleanliness of the town and how, the citizens are very responsible in their garbage and putting their garbage out just the morning of or can't. And really, I was impressed that a lot of these things that you're already doing to help manage the coyotes are also very effective in managing rodent populations. So as an outsider, it's an incredibly clean and beautiful town.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith, and thank you, John. And I also want to say that our commercial establishments, the Tides, the Kelly Greens, and Ocean View, and Captains, and Henry Catering, they all do a great job in making sure that they're keeping their establishments clean and well protected. So I want to thank them for their efforts also. But thank you again. I appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to Tony. You want to talk about the special town meeting and public forum questions and answers? But there's one thing I want to say, Tony, if I could, while we're on this subject. I've been noticing there was some chatter on social media about the Board of Selectmen's vote a few weeks ago to limit the quorum from 75 to 30 votes. And there was, I guess there was some questioning why we made that vote. The answer to that is quite simple. Because we want to make sure we have a special town meeting. Certainly limiting the quorum to 30 votes does not mean we're capping the participation at 30. I hope 1,000 people show up at the meeting. But I don't want to hold a special town meeting and incur the expenses of a special town meeting if we don't have the votes to conduct it. So we want to make sure that we, if we're going to put on a special town meeting, we can have the vote, that's needed. But certainly, there was not the intention of the Board of Selectmen to limit the participation at town meeting. We all would like to see as many people come as possible. So I just wanted to lay that out there because I was a little concerned with some of the chatter I saw on social media regarding that.
Yeah, and we thought about this scheduling the date of the town meeting. We procured the demo in June, and contractors who bid are only required to hold their bid for 14 days. So when we got the results of those bids, I'll get into that, but we asked the low bidder if they would hold their vote for up to 90 days, which brings us to late September. So, certainly August is not a good time to hold a special town meeting. It would have been tough for us to pull everything together to potentially host one with preparing the finance committee book and all the other items that we had to put together. And usually, people take vacations in August. So that put us into early September. The first week is Labor Day. looking at it, we said, I think it's less likely to get people to come to town hall on a Saturday afternoon in one of the last, Saturdays of the summer versus potential, doing it on a weeknight. So that's how we ended up with a Tuesday night. But yeah, essentially we want to make sure we have a quorum. It's a very important vote. It's, and there's a lot of effort that goes into preparing for the meeting. So we want to make sure that we have enough people there, and I suspect we will. But certainly, as you mentioned, it's not a cap; it's a minimum. So tonight's this portion of the meeting, we talked as a board, the Board of Selectmen and I spoke about wanting to provide the residents an opportunity to get on here and maybe ask some questions, make some comments. We're certainly not debating the vote tonight, but want to make sure that we educate people on how we got to this point, why it's important that we take this have this meeting, and provide as much opportunity for the public to ask questions, and that's why we're doing this tonight. We could do another one prior to town meeting. We have another Board of Selectmen meeting on the 6th of September, so we could do this again if there are additional questions that come up between now and then. And of course, my office is always open and we're all accessible. So if anybody has, would feel more comfortable speaking, on a one-on-one format, I'm happy to do that as well. But essentially, we are attempting to carry out the vote of 2021 with the Coast Guard housing property. And, over the last 2 years, we've been working to put the town in a position to go ahead and procure the demolition of the vacant properties. And over that time, the market has increased significantly. The reason for that time period is that there's a number of factors, but largely the town meeting vote and recommendation of the Coast Guard Housing Committee was to provide residents a 1-year grace period to find alternative housing. So the vote happened in May of 2021. That notice or request to vacate went out in September of 2021. In part, some of the reason that we didn't put that out until September was because between the town meeting vote in September, we had an A&R process that we were going through with the planning board, some land title research activity that we had to square away because there was an issue with when the federal government provided the town the property. So we had to clear that up. Certainly we wanted to make sure that wasn't going to be a hurdle we couldn't overcome before we started asking residents to vacate. So we cleared that hurdle. Then we provided the 1-year notice for residents to vacate the property. And so that would bring you to September of 2022. It wasn't until April of 2023 that we had 9 properties vacant. And certainly, in order to get the best possible price from a contractor to come in and demolish the properties is to have the most amount of vacant properties available for that, rather than having a contractor mobilize multiple times, which would cost the town more money. Also, in the last few months or the last year, as the properties became vacated, we hired a contractor to assess the building materials so that they could produce a scope that could be included in the procurement documents of what building materials exist, and essentially describe to potential bidders what they would be dealing with so that they could bid price as close to possible as what they think it's going to cost to remove the buildings. That wasn't, again, that's something that we wouldn't have done until we had a significant number of properties vacant, because they actually went into the vacant properties and assessed each one. So they put together a scope for us. We put out the bid, and the bid results came in, and the low bidder came in at $669,000. And so our original in 2021 town meeting approved $300,000. The contractor that we hired to do the assessment on the properties, that contract is for $69,102. So of the 300, about 70,000 is allocated for that service. So that leaves you about $230,000. So in order to award a contract, we have to have the funds approved and authorized by the town. One thing we looked at, again, keeping in mind that this is only for 9 vacant properties and there are 12. We, are looking at how much it's costing per unit to based on that low bid, and extrapolating what we expect it to cost to do the remaining 3 once they are eventually vacated as well. We also have potential unknown costs. Once we remove the underground oil tanks, the earth around them will be tested for, any type of necessary environmental remediation. That's an unknown factor right now. So we want to include some contingency there. And then there's going to be costs associated with the actual, procurement of selling the properties and legal work related to that. So the town's asking, the special town meeting is to authorize the town to borrow up to $1 million, which in total, that would give the town an authorization of 1.3, the 300 that was approved in 2021, and should this pass in September, the additional $1 million. And that would leave us, essentially, that leaves us a contingency amount of $339,000, $339,898. So that would allow us to proceed with this bid and get the 9 properties demoed. And it would give us we'd have an additional $339,898 to finish the last 3 and any other types of costs that may come up. So that's my brief overview. Do any of the members of the selectmen want to add to that before we go to the public for any questions and answers?
Josh?
I guess I'll just add that I support what you, Mark, and Tony said about the reduced quorum. The suggestion of these Facebook posts that we're wishing to limit participation is 100% false and ridiculous, and we hope and expect to have robust participation. On the topic of the expense, nobody wants to pay more than planned for the necessary work, but and likewise, we don't want to have a special town meeting, but that is what the circumstances dictate. So I hope people approach this with an open mind and understand that this is necessary to complete the wish from the 2021 town meeting vote.
If I could, to add to that, I think at the past Finance and Advisory Committee meeting, we threw together some numbers, and I think it's important to note that after these are sold and the associated costs are subtracted, the town still, and Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, will come out with a a 1.7 to $2 million profit.
Yeah, I'd have to recheck the numbers. Obviously, it's based on an estimate value of vacant properties. If you estimate them to sell, somewhere between $400,000 and $450,000. Let's average it out at 425 times 12. That's 5.1 million. Minus the 1.8 million that we owe by January 2025 on the loan for the original purchase of the property, and minus the additional 1.3 that we're asking, that we've already approved 3 and we're asking for the additional 1, that would leave a balance or additional profit of $2 million. And I think that's on the conservative side. So there's still, the potential revenue produced by the sale of the property should certainly cover the additional cost of borrowing for demolishing the properties.
And leave a healthy profit.
Okay, thank you, Tony, for that overview. I think the sooner we get this property cleaned up, the better off we're all going to be. The longer we wait, the more expensive it could be, particularly with underground fuel storage tanks. We don't think they're leaking now, but the longer you wait, the more you're exposed to those perhaps dangers. So I think it's really important that we get this property cleaned up as a first step. So hopefully we'll see everybody at town meeting. If there's any questions online now, Tony, about this, be glad to open it up.
Yep, if anyone on the call cares to ask a question or make a comment, please just raise your hand, unmute yourself, state your name and address, and we'll try to answer your question as best as possible. All right, Peter.
Okay, a couple of things to say. One is, when I was younger, the refuse, the garbage pickup was actually free because there's a value to the
Peter, would you mind stating your name and address just to?
I am
official?
sorry. I am sorry. Peter Glocke, 20 Simmons Road, Nahant, Mass. So what I was going to say, number one, is the refuse pickup, referring Black Earth, is when I was younger, was free because the value of the garbage that was picked up was used, and actually at the time it wasn't in composting, it was pig farmers, but there was a value to that. So now to expect people to pay to take away something that they could actually garbage disposal and get rid of for free, to me seems a little odd. And that's actually why I don't do Black Earth. My neighbors do, but I don't. I don't want to pay for something that has value to someone else. That's the first thing I want to say. Second thing I want to say is, when you talk about trash collection and unified containers, that also seems to indicate, like the recycling, everyone gets one container. So even though my trash is generally one green bag per week, sometimes after cleaning out storage or cleaning out my basement, I have 2, 3, 4, 5 things outside. And generally, when you start talking about unifying the trash collection, it limits people to 1 barrel per week. No more, nothing else is picked up. And that's my second concern. And then the third thing that I'm going to bring up is the whole thing about rodent infestation, do we really have a problem in town besides near the food service places that have rodents? I haven't seen rodents anywhere near my neighborhood for for a year. I haven't seen raccoons. I haven't seen skunks ever since we've had coyotes. And I haven't actually seen coyotes in Little Nahant for over a year. So is rodents in Nahant really a big enough deal? Aside from people controlling their own waste disposal, is it really a big enough deal to look at the various options that were presented? Okay,
Thank
so
you, thank you,
there's
Peter.
three topics.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I was opening this up for questions and answers originally on the Coast Guard housing property. Public forum is going to come next, but you did bring up a few points. Let me just say, first of all, trash collection was never free in the town. At one point in time, it was part of your tax rate. But with the onset in the late 1980s, 1990s, with Proposition 2.5, the state authorized municipalities to create enterprise funds and to separate out trash and water and sewer from their tax rate on separate billings, because they realized
What I was talking about is the.
Excuse me, Peter. They realized
No,
that
no. You're misunderstanding my argument. My argument is not with trash collection, besides the 1 barrel per house, which is a way to limit things. I'm going with the garbage collection, which was free.
Yeah, right. You're talking about, you're saying composting used to be free. It used to
Correct.
be.
Because
Yeah.
there's a value to the things that they get in quantity. After they gather all that stuff in the hunt, they go back and they compost, or they feed their pigs, or they do. Back when I was a kid, it was a pig farmer, but there's a value to that, which then is something that should be recognized, that the residents shouldn't have to pay for. We're giving a value to someone else.
Right. So, Peter, I wrote down your 3 things. Please stay on the call. I'll answer them when we get to citizens forum. I think I understand what you're saying, but this part of the meeting is mostly for any questions related to the special town meeting article. And so I want to stick to that. Do you have anything on that?
No, I apologize for jumping in early.
No, that's no problem. It's no problem. I'll come back to that during citizens forum.
All is good. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Brendan, please, again, name and address.
Brendan Baronic, Homestead 2 Summer Street. A couple of questions. One, I had sent an email a couple of weeks ago, I think to you, Tony, asking about the 2021 information sessions, number 1 and 2, whether those were still available online. I didn't hear a response, so I wasn't sure if those were available or posted.
Sorry, I missed your email. So you're talking about the info sessions that I did leading up to that town meeting?
Yes, yeah, because number 3 is available online, but 1 and 2 I haven't been able to find. And when it gets to talking about Article 20, you basically said like all the material was covered in the previous 2 information sessions, and people should look at those. So that's why I was wondering.
So that's not helpful to you. Okay, I'll take a look, see if I can find them. If they're recorded, they should be up. I don't recall if we recorded them or not, but I'll try and find them for you.
Okay. Then I guess the next question I had was back in 2021, when the Coast Guard presented at the town meeting, they listed on the screen, they had showed, their approach, and they listed out costs, and they mentioned the 300,000. They're, within the 300,000, they had listed 160,000 needed for demo, and there'd be plus additional costs if there was leakage. I was wondering, where did the 160,000 come from? Did the town at the time get bids on what it'd take to demo these properties?
So I'd have to ask the members of the Coast Guard Design Committee, because they had originally come up with that estimate. I think they just did some general research trying to get those costs. But certainly, as I mentioned, the assessment that we've conducted in the past few months now on the building materials, so that we could include that in the procurement, that hadn't been done yet. And obviously in general, prices have increased since then.
Okay, and I get, so I rewatched the 2021 town meeting and discussion about Article 20, and there didn't seem to be a clear mention that no environmental assessment had been done. And I was trying to figure out when that was communicated to the voters. It was only stated that, if leaks were found, there would be a cost. I believe that's what the person from the Coast Guard committee had said.
I don't know if that, was ever asked or if that was ever communicated, but it certainly hadn't been done at that time. I think they were trying to provide, I think they tried to provide the most accurate estimate possible at that time. It certainly just, is a different 2.5 years later. So it's just, or 3 years later. So it's just a different market now. But I don't know if they ever articulated that at the time. The threat of potential leaks and what that unknown cost of remediation still exists today. We don't know, right? Because you're not going to know until you actually dig up the tanks.
So speaking of the tanks, so the properties that are vacant, have the tanks been emptied?
No, that's part of this process. That's part of the bid documents here, and a part of this demo, this procurement, this job would be to properly remove any remaining material in the tanks, properly dispose of it, and then remove the tanks themselves.
Is there any reason for why we hadn't just emptied the tanks in the last couple of years, especially if the properties were vacant? Because it seemed like we just left a ticking time bomb.
Well, I don't know if I would call it that. I don't, we may not have any issue whatsoever right now, but again, we didn't have the properties, we didn't have 9 vacant until April. And so as long as there were still residents living there, we have to provide heat. So it's not something that we could have, done in a mass effort.
Okay. And when the buildings that were vacant were assessed, was there any remarkable difference between the buildings, or were they basically cookie cutter and the same construction and materials?
Essentially, they're mostly cookie cutter. Some have put new flooring down on top of the old original, tile. But essentially they're all the same. We have one property that had a underground tank removed a few years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So that one's certainly unique.
Okay. All right. So I was just wondering, since if they're pretty much cookie cutter, then, the expectations about the homes you haven't assessed yet, maybe you may have a reasonable handle as what might be there.
Yes. However, when you bid this type of work out, being able to specifically state what exists in each unit is going to give the ability of the bidders, to bid a more accurate price. when you kind of put it out there as this is what we assume, they're going to add in contingency numbers and potentially give you a larger price.
Yeah, I can understand it, but they're also going to know that these were all built at the same time by the government, so that they generally are homogeneous.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Shannon,
Yes, sir.
you just say your name and address and go ahead.
Sure. My name is John Shannon Bianchi, 14 Harborview Road, Nahant. So my question, I'll put it up in the chat. I'll just read it. Might be easier for everyone else to follow along. Could we allocate money and fund a handicap accessible heritage trail from Veterans Memorial to Bailey's Hill with the proceeds of the profits from the sale of the Coast Guard lots? The heritage trail runs through the Coast Guard housing property, and I think it would be a nice gesture to give something back to the community for selling these lots. Is that a possibility to allocate money from the sale of these lots at town meeting?
The trail will exist through the property. We have sectioned that trail out. We're going to make sure that the heritage trail does cut through there to Bailey's Hill, Shannon.
But I
Like
also think
handicap accessible, like for a wheelchair?
I'm not sure any part of the heritage trail is handicap accessible. We'll try to currently. Well, I mean, certainly.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Well,
so I need to get like,
I think the
I
answer,
need to get some
Shannon,
big
is,
wheels on my wheelchair.
Shannon, the answer is no. As far as at this town meeting, we can't do that. But the proceeds of the sale, first, we're required to pay off the $1.8 million loan. The remaining amount comes into the general fund, and it's like a free cash revenue, so it should be used on one-time funds, like funding projects of one-time capital projects, or building, paying down debt or building up our reserves. So it'll be a future town meeting. It would be a future town meeting.
Yeah,
that
right.
You could say, hey, I'd like to use, we'd like to, through a CPC project or something. There's a million other ways to do that. So yes, we certainly going to provide the right type of funds that could be used for that type of project, but no, that's not something that we would be able to do at the special town meeting.
It would go into the general fund, which is really promising. So that's good.
I would say that the handicap accessible heritage trail, or some portion of it anyway, would be an excellent CPC application, because we have the benefit of the state match for such a thing. So keep that in mind, and anyone can put one in. So
awesome. Yeah, well, thank you for that. That's my only question.
All right, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else on the call that would like to ask a question? Okay,
good. So let's move on to E. We have the town administrator's goals. Tony, we got a lot. I know that you got them out to all of us today. Why don't we put these on our next meeting? I'll ask Josh and Jean to take a look at them, to send Christian any edits or additions that you would like to see, and then perhaps we could deal with it at the next meeting. Is that okay with you?
that's fine with me. What I sent you out today was a status update of where we are with the goals that were set by last year. It sounds like you were asked, did you want me to start putting together goals for the upcoming year?
Yeah, so what I wanted to do is to take last year's goals, because some of them can be ongoing. And members of the board could continue those as goals for this year, for this coming fiscal year, or we could add new ones. But what I like to have is a new set of a revised set of goals at our next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think, Mark, we could, what Tony submitted this afternoon was sort of his view of the status versus last year's goals. And then, so I'd suggest maybe we review that status, and then the second phase would be establishment or recycling of goals for 2020, fiscal year 2024, right?
Sounds good. Jane?
Can we take those in two different segments? Bring this back, what Tony gave us today, bring that back to the next meeting and go over those, and then give us another meeting or two to review the new goals and objectives that he's establishing.
I think that makes sense, Gene. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Talk over you.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that makes sense, Gene, because it would be a long meeting if we reviewed all the last year's goals and status and established new ones and the rationale behind those and so on. So I think it makes sense to split them up. And furthermore, our assessment on where we are versus last year's goals is likely to play into what we set for next year's goals. So I would agree that breaking it into a series of meetings would be desirable.
Sounds good. Okay, let's plan on doing that then. Okay, Tony, lowlands?
Yeah, so we had lowlands public drainage as an agenda item at the last selectmen meeting. Since then, we've had some communication with the neighborhood through email. And so I think a lot of people missed it. And so I wanted to kind of repeat what I said at the last meeting. But also you should know that I emailed them tonight and hope to schedule a neighborhood meeting for either next week or the week after, so that, to give them a little bit of an opportunity to, it's a long kind of discussion. So it's a in-depth project that we're working on over there. So I didn't want to take up a ton of time of tonight. But essentially, we've completed the assessment conducted by Dubois and King, which really looked at, an alternative analysis of the drainage issues in that neighborhood, the public health concerns that we have, and prioritized solutions and an approach. One of the first items is to inspect, repair, and upgrade the existing stormwater system and potentially expand it underneath, the streets of Fox Hill, Castle Way, Castle Road, and Wood Road. And the second part of that assessment recommended, restoring the outfall pipe on Castle Road that goes to Black Rock Beach, and perhaps doing that more in a forced pump type outfall system that is activated by float or in emergency situations. It also recommended the continued maintenance and upgrade of the stormwater ditch system that flows from the lowlands to Bear Pond. It did some, the analysis had taken a look at that. It's actually has improved a lot in the last few years already because of the work with mosquito control. But there's, what we found there is that it's pitched correctly, it's moving, but there's culvert issues. So wherever there's like a crossing, along that ditch system, the culverts are slowing down the flow of stormwater traveling to Bear Pond. So there's some improvements recommended there. So we have funding already approved, for these efforts, $550,000. That was approved at a previous town meeting. We don't know, how far that's going to go, but we're going to start with recommendation 1, which is improving the stormwater system in that area. We notified National Grid that was going to be our next project, as well as notifying them that we were going to be doing the water main on Fox Hill Road. That's a standard practice because typically National Grid, if we're going to be entering, going to be repaving a road or doing utility work there, they want to know about it. And if they have needs, they want to come in and, get ahead of us and do their repairs first. So National Grid, we actually pushed them to come in and redo the gas main on Lower Fox Hill Road, as well as install a new gas main on Ward Road, because residents on Ward Road were connected to the gas main on Fox Hill Road through abutting properties. So we wanted to fix that. And we also got the National Grid to install a gas main down Castle Way and to the Lowlands pump station, where we're going to soon be doing an upgrade to that facility. And by adding a gas main in that area, it allows us to have backup generators running off of natural gas. So we by pushing for those efforts, it did delay some of National Grid's work, but they have since, over the last few months, they've made those upgrades and repairs. Unfortunately, as they did that, they actually damaged the stormwater system that we're going to be attempting to fix anyways. But that led to a lot of drainage issues, of a system that was working, and needed improvements, failed to continue to work for a couple months on the lower part of Fox Hill Road because of the breaks that National Grid had caused on our system. Took some time to work with National Grid to get them out and prove that they were the cause of those issues. And finally, we did get them out, and they've since made those repairs. So now we have the water main work in design phase, and we also in that same area have some sewer repairs related to the II work that's listed under the DEP consent order, it as high priority repairs. So we're going to have a lot of underground utility work happening in that neighborhood. And, in our assessment is that the fastest way for us to get the stormwater work done is to include it in the procurement of those projects, because it's going to be the same contractor. He's going to already be mobilized. It's going to result in a faster time frame on the project and potentially reduce costs, which would then allow us to stretch that dollar towards phase 2 of the project. So that's where we are right now. We're hoping that we get that. Our goal is to procure that work in the next month or so, and hopefully have it constructed prior to the end of the calendar year, so that the trenches can settle. Typically, when you do underground utility work, you want to give a repaired, roadway trench one winter season to settle before you pave. So that's another thing we're trying to, Castle Road's a mess from the work that National Grid did, and so is Fox Hill Road. And it's going to be even more of a mess once we do the water and II work. So the sooner we get that project done and we repair those trenches and let them settle, the sooner we'll be able to come back and pave, the end of next year. So that's where we are. That's what our effort is trying to get this phase 1 project designed and procured as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you, Tony. When do you think that neighborhood meeting is going to be?
I suggest in my email with them, I suggested a Tuesday night, maybe the 22nd or the 29th.
Mhm.
I see you're starting to get some responses, so that's good. I just want to take the opportunity to encourage anyone who lives in the neighborhood to attend this in-person meeting and spread the word to your friends that might not be listening to this exciting meeting. But I'm sure if you live in that neighborhood, you'll want to be part of that meeting on the 22nd or the 29th.
Great. That meeting will be open to the public, Tony, correct?
Yeah.
So
I
anyone
mean,
can
unless
join in on
it's
it,
either
right?
gonna, I don't know if we're gonna do it in person. That was one of the suggestions I made. It could be by Zoom, but either way, I would post it on the community calendar and anyone could join.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. Preserving East Point, no update on that. Josh, any update?
Yeah. Just to recap a little bit on the eminent domain case a while back ago, now over a year ago, Northeastern filed a motion that the conservation restriction was not for a valid purpose. So we're currently in that phase of the project where the court decides whether this is true or not. And as I said, it's been going on for over a year. A number of people have been deposed and gone into Boston and provided testimony for Northeastern's, lawyers, including you and me, Mark. At this point, all the depositions are complete and the discovery phase is now closed. Dispositive motions must be filed by September 15th, and oppositions to those motions will be served by October 13th. The motion packages must be filed with the court by November 17th. There is a status conference on December 13th. At that status conference, we expect the court to set a hearing date on all the motions. That hearing will probably be in early January. I remain confident that we will succeed in preserving East Point as a conservation area and return to having full public access to this area for all of us to enjoy. Our lawyers, likewise, are confident that the courts will agree that the conservation restriction is in fact a valid public purpose. And so hopefully they're right, and we'll move on to the next phase of the process after, not until January, of course, but where the Board of 3 commissioners decide on the fair compensation for the conservation restriction. So that is the status.
Thank you, Josh. Great update. Thanks a lot. Okay. Town administrators report.
I'll just repeat that we're hoping that the Little Nahant playground equipment is going to be installed the first week of September. Excited for that project to get completed. And I'll leave it at that. I see it's already 8:23, so I know we have citizens forum still.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tony. Okay, we'll open up to citizens forum. I know Peter had some questions. You want to follow up on that first, Tony? And
yes, and Christine, sorry, I saw your hand raised after, but I'll get to you in a second. All right, so Peter, you had talked about composting used to being free, and so why would we ask residents to pay for it now? I don't know why the market has changed on composting materials, but it's not, to have curbside collection of composting, there isn't any free service available. And, in this pilot program, we're certainly not requiring people to compost or to sign up for this program, but we're incentivizing it. And the reason is because of our effort to attempt to reduce your trash rate and the cost to the town to do curbside collection of trash. And that would be accomplished by, in one way, by reducing tonnage. So if you incentivize the public to, move the heaviest part of their trash into composting, it could produce a significant savings for the entire town on trash collection costs. Yeah, I'm gonna unmute you, Peter. Or ask you to unmute.
Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is, if we're looking at reducing trash costs, would the town engage the collection agency and say, hey, we'll give you $5,000 a year to collect the whole town, rather than passing that cost off onto individual people? That would clearly reduce our trash rate, but it would also would increase our recycle rate. Is it something that the town would consider, so there'd be no cost to the end user, but the town would take it on as a town-wide contract?
So we did look into that. It's two different companies. So you have Waste Management, who does your, household waste and recycling collection. And then Black Earth Composting is a separate company. Waste Management doesn't offer composting at the curbside collection point. And so if the town were to, hire Black Earth Composting or another composting company to provide curbside collection, it would actually increase your trash fee, because now we're bringing in another contract that, your trash rate funds. So it's a pass through. There's no, the town's not, the town wouldn't actually reduce by forcing by engaging in another contract for another collection service for composting.
What I think we're avoiding here is there's value to the compost. And in the past, the people who collected it recognized that value, and there was no cost to the end user because they were collecting product that was of value to their organization. So essentially,
that market
it
has
boils back
changed.
to,
Yeah, that market has changed. If you can find a company that will pick up your compost for free, I'll call them tomorrow. Because it would help our tonnage on the waste management side, because you're now moving that compost out of the waste stream into the composting stream. So I would definitely be interested in that.
I do understand that, but where my neighbor uses that service and they pay for it, and I think, why would they pay for it? Because I can dispose of that stuff for free. And I do have compost in the backyard. I have the compost bin. We do put a lot of stuff in that, but still, why would I elect to pay for something that I can do for free somewhere else?
Right.
And I guess that's my point, is why would anyone in town elect to pay for something that they can do for free somewhere else?
Yeah, no, that's a challenging feat for me when I'm trying to come up with a way to incentivize it. There are other benefits to composting, outside of just the financial impact. And that's why you do it on your own, right? some folks don't, have the ability to compost in their backyard or don't know how to do it. And they would like to be able to compost, but have it be taken away. So our effort is really attempting to reduce tonnage amounts. And, that's why we came up with this pilot program of we'll reimburse you your first year as a member. So you don't have to pay for it. It would be a free service for the first year. Our hope is that people would continue to be part of that program. But we also don't want to make it mandatory. We want to give residents the option. The other part you asked, you spoke about was unified barrels and how that can restrict people. With the recycling, similarly, I think we would allow or offer people the ability to buy a second barrel. The first one would be free, of course. And so that if you feel the need to have a second barrel, you have the opportunity to get one. But, again, that's actually that's part of the effort, I guess, is to encourage recycling. Now, 6 years ago, it was really valuable to encourage recycling because recycling was cheaper than waste collection. Today, it's really not. We're not really trying to push people to move stuff to recycling for a financial benefit because it doesn't really exist anymore, but there's still the environmental benefit. In part, we would, the idea is to try to reduce tonnage, and having unified barrels would help with that. The other part of it is, the wildlife concerns. So making sure everybody would have a lidded, sturdy barrel that, instead of topless barrels that, have bags hanging over and birds, are ripping the bags apart and trash is getting everywhere, which leads to wildlife issues. But then mostly the reduction in labor costs for collection would potentially result in a reduction in our contract costs. So again, all of it is focused on trying to reduce your trash rate.
But that means one barrel per house, no matter what.
If
you can fit it in that barrel, if you can fit it in that barrel, then it's good for this week. But if you're, let's say cleaning out your garage and you have a barrel plus a bunch of stuff, that won't be picked up because now we're being limited to one barrel.
Yeah, I mean, there's no solution. There's definitely a benefit to the current policy, which is you have unlimited trash amount. But with that policy, you have a trash rate and trash costs that are increasing at 4% each year. So there's definitely not a silver bullet, but the idea there we would give people the opportunity to get a second barrel to try to account for that. It's not perfect, but I hear you on that concern. Okay, Christine, again, if you could just say your name and address.
Hi, sure. Christine Johnson-Licio, 15 Fox Hill Road. I wanted to thank you for addressing the lowlands drainage project. I think, we all recognize that we've made progress in quite a few of the areas that you've outlined. And, I got to share with all of you and the selectmen and you, Tony, and also the neighbors, the condition of our current drainage system when National Grid came to do those repairs that you referred to. I firsthand saw that you can peel our storm drain back with your hand. There are holes in it. It's like Swiss cheese. And so it is not draining our neighborhood. And this is something that is very apparent. And so the neighborhood, and I know I've spoken with many of the neighborhood, we are very concerned that this system has really deteriorated to the point that when faced with another major coastal event, it will be catastrophic for us because we are dealing with issues of just rainfall, heavy rainfall of, 8 to 10 minutes will cause flooding for the homeowners. So I do like what I heard tonight better than at the last meeting where you had pushed up the timeline with a more definite conclusion, hopefully by the end of this year, because to go through another winter flooding season without these repairs is just hard for any of us to imagine now that we've actually seen what the current drainage system looks like below Fox Hill Road. There have been 3 sections of it that have been repaired over the past year as it has just collapsed under the weight of the soil that National Grid put back in the street when they repaved. And when they pounded that down so they could put blacktop down, the entire sections just collapsed. So we, appreciate really moving this to procurement and making the improvements happen with just this section as soon as is possible. And though we know that it will be disruptive, we welcome the improvement because it's been a long time coming. So, and do appreciate you reaching out to the town, the neighborhood to have a meeting with all of us, keeping in mind this is summer and a lot of folks are on vacation. So I don't know how many people can actually attend, but we appreciate you reaching out. I did have a question about the funding. I know that at our last town meeting, $550,000 were approved for the projects for drainage in the lowlands. I thought there was also some funding left over from the previous vote that we've had. We've had 3 votes now. So I was just hoping you don't have to provide that tonight, but that when we do address this issue again, you could kind of break down where the funds have been spent over the last 3 town meeting votes that we've had. I think we're well over $800,000 now, in our efforts to improve drainage here. And so that would be helpful to have a breakdown as to where the funds have gone for this project and what remains. And if we do need to go into, the next alternative, which is the outfall, looking at what we need to do in terms of procuring those funds.
Okay, thank you, Christine. I will, I'll put together a expense report of some sort for the neighborhood meeting. I don't think that there's any leftover funds from the previous approvals, but I'll find out and provide that explanation.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Tony.
Yep, you're welcome. Brendan.
Brendan Baronic, Olmsted, 2 Summer Street. Questions and a comment. I did want to respond to one of the other people on the call about the composting and using their waste disposal. That it's not exactly free because they do, generally, from my understanding, for waste disposal grinders, you have to run the water, so you're paying water sewer bills and you're using electricity. So no matter what, there is a cost with that getting rid of disposal. But for the compost in general, I was wondering what the year 2 cost would be for this black earth, because you're saying the first year there'd be a reduced price. What is the regular annual price?
So I think, give me 1 second, but if we get 30 more residents or households to sign up for black earth, there'll be a 30% reduction in the standard pricing that you would currently incur.
The standard pricing now is $20 a month, so it'll be 30% off that.
So you'd go down to like $15 a month if you were paying monthly. So right now, a 1 year subscription would cost you $229.99. Which is the way that he sent me this was confusing. So hold on, just bear with me for 1 second.
That would include the $20 per month, Tony, plus the cost of the bucket.
So the 6-month price right now to get picked up weekly is $115 for 6 months for a weekly pickup. If we got 30 more people to sign up from Nahant, that 6-month price would reduce down to $90 per month, $90 for the 6 months. Or $180 for the entire year. So we're gonna we want to incentivize a full year's membership, and so that would cost $230 today. But if 30, which would be completely reimbursed by the town, but if 30 more households sign up, everybody, including existing members, would get a 30% reduction in their costs, and that annual rate would go down from $230 to $180.
Okay. I guess the next question is, since we're talking about reducing tonnage, that will help with the trash rates, is first off, do you as Waste Management said, if you reduce your trash by X number of tons, we can cut your price? Do we have an idea of a target?
We have, yeah, well, we have put together some conservative estimates on how much, tonnage gets removed per user per month, I think it was, Mark.
Yes.
And so we do have some estimates, but it's conservative, it's based, and it's unknown because we don't know how many people are going to sign up. But the way that our contract works with Waste Management is we have a base price plus a unit price per ton. So any reduction in tonnage will produce a savings in the total cost. But the way that we estimate our total assessment to Waste Management and then use that to estimate, to decide what we need to appropriate and use that to decide how much we need to collect. All that is based off of a 3-year average of tonnage in the town of Nahant.
Okay.
So future contracts would be based, as more people compost, as tonnage reduces, future contract prices would be reflective of that as well.
All right. So I was kind of wondering if there's any way we could establish like a baseline, and if we on a monthly basis are below that baseline tonnage value, that we get a benefit, so that, because, if over time more people go, are composting, you would think over time that the tonnage would slowly reduce. And I'm just kind of wondering if on a month-to-month basis, if we can gear it so we benefit from whenever we're below the baseline.
Well, let me just add, Tony, that the town does provide an abatement to all residents who do compost. What is it? $20 a month, a year or something, Tony?
$20 for your
Yeah,
trash
and
fee.
the average, I think, per week, per household for food waste is about 25 pounds per week. And I think that's realistic. I'm by myself in my house or my mother, and I put out at least probably 30 pounds a week of food waste. So, 30 pounds times 1,700 divided by 2,000 is probably about 300 tons per year.
Right. Then multiply that by the unit cost per ton. But then you really, even more so get savings if that tonnage reduction potentially results in needing one less truck to do collection. Now you're really seeing some savings. So we did a lot of the analysis in previous meetings. But yeah, Brendan, I like where you're going with that is how can we provide, data to the community to show the progress that we're making and how that turns into, potential financial savings.
And Brendan, you did mention the potential savings on water and sewer. And that is significant also. We haven't really got a handle on that yet, but it's something that we can look into a little bit more. You're running your your garbage disposal, you're turning the water on to run it, plus our wastewater treatment costs at Lynn Water and Sewer is based largely on solids in the waste stream. That could be eliminated also. So there are plenty of savings there also.
All right. And I had one final question. So if the percentage of the town that uses Black Earth or whatever composting service, if we get up to like 50 or 75% of the town is using this, is there any way we could get these companies to visit the town twice, like in a week? Because I guess my concern is if the entire town's getting picked up on the same day, you're going to have a lot of organic material that's going to sit around and allow the animals to get at, versus if there is, kind of how the trash is split up between two different zones during the week. The same type of setup could with a composter company.
Yeah, it's possible. Would love to have that problem to try to figure that out. But it's definitely possible. Black Earth is very cooperative in our conversation so far, so I don't see why not.
Yeah, the containers, Brendan, are pretty solid. They lock pretty well. I mean, you can kick them over and push them around, and even when they're falling, that lid is tough to get off.
All right, I don't know. The seals can be pretty crafty.
Yeah. Well, they haven't got into mine yet, and I've been doing it for about a year. So,
good. Thank you.
Thanks, Brendan. All right, anyone else?
Okay, nobody else. So we're going to go into executive session, Tony,
Yes.
on Coast Guard housing. Okay, let's see. I move that the Board of Selectmen adjourn to executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss pending litigation strategy regarding Town of Nahant versus 4 Coast Guard housing tenants. If the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, I, as chair, do declare that it would have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and we will not return to open meeting. Do I have a second on that?
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
I just want to clarify that, the reason it may provide, it may be a little confusing to people. It's 4 Coast Guard housing tenants, but it's 3 households. We just wanted to clarify that for anyone, listening in.
Okay, are we ready to vote?
Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Josh Antrim, aye.
Gene Canty, aye.
Mark Cullen and I.
All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back after this commercial. Thanks, John.
Oh.